Good evening, and I apologize to everybody. The Republicans lost track of time in our caucus. My name is Harry Fisher. I'm calling the meeting of the June meeting of the regular Board of Estimate and Taxation meeting at 6:36. Would you please join and stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up is item number 2, the assessor's report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow members of the BET. I'd like to present the assessor's report for June 2024. So the grand list of 2023 was sent to Quality Data. They have printed out our tax bills, and they are scheduled to be mailed tomorrow, Tuesday, June 18th. So they will be mailing out about 78,000 tax bills for the motor vehicle, personal property, and the first half of the real estate. They will be due on August 1st. August 1st this year is a Thursday, so it'll be no problem. The tax bills will reflect all the senior and disabled credits. In addition, this year for the volunteer firefighters, the credit was increased from $1,000 to $2,000. So you'll notice on my report the increase of firefighter credits that we were giving away this year. In addition, the income and expense forms were sent out back in April. They were due June 1st. We sent out roughly 743, and we received about 578 back. We usually do have about 100 plus or so. It's 165 this year that never send us back this information. Other than that, does anybody have any questions for me this evening?
Seeing none, may I have a motion to accept?
I'll move to accept the report.
Any objection to all in favor?
Who seconded? Sorry.
Who seconded?
David. Alfano.
David Alfano. So that passes 11-0-0. Thank you. We now move on to our routine applications, of which we've got numerous ones. Karen, if you would read through these, please.
Okay, routine items, CC1, Conservation Commission, F17253-800, amount of $8,756.50, approval to use for botanical agricultural supply. PS1, Parking Services, G219, various, amount of $60,000, a transfer for meter repair. PS2, Parking Services, G219, various, $30,000 transfer for repair parking garage wheel stops. PW9 DPW B31259620, $3 million capital carry forward for the North Street Bridge. TC1 Town Clerk A10151 various, $8,000 transfer from account number A150-52149. TA1 Tag $154,000, release of conditions. IT1, information technology, account A134-51641, $32,000, transfer for cyber study professional fees.
So
May I have a motion to approve?
I move to.
Well, no, I've moved the item.
Okay, second the item then.
Okay, Karen Fatsiliotis moves it, Leslie Tarkington seconds. May I have a report of the Budget Committee, please?
These are routine, so I didn't prepare a report.
Oh, okay.
of the
I
routine.
thought we usually
No,
reported.
not for
No?
routine.
Okay. Is there any objection to an affirmative vote on all of these? Seeing none, this passes 11-0-0. Okay, we now move to, I need a motion to go into executive session,
Move that
please.
we enter executive session at 6:41.
Moved by Karen Fassiliotis, seconded by Mr. Alfano to go into executive session for the purpose of a legal matter. If someone could get the door over there, it would be appreciated. And then everybody turn off their mics, please. I also want to say, as Laura Okay, we have come out of executive session, and we're now ready to go through the non-routine applications.
And just for the record, motion made by Faciliotis, seconded by Selps at 6:53 PM to exit executive session.
And it was an 11-0-0 vote. So the non-routine applications, first up is SE 6. Could I think in this case, take a report of the law committee, please? Or a motion to put it on the floor first.
Yes, I move that account number SE6 from the First Selectman, P935-57350, in the amount of $40,000, settlement Patricia Riggins versus the town of Greenwich.
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. Selps, moved by Ms. Faciliotis. Could I have a report of the law committee, please?
Yes, without going into detail, basically, this is a defective sidewalk case that was identified by an employee by the Department of Public Works prior to a plaintiff tripping and falling on a transition piece on the sidewalk, breaking a wrist that had previously been broken and had healed before. In a sense of the meeting, the Law Committee recommended a settlement of $40,000, and that is the amount we have before us that the plaintiff has agreed to.
Thank you. Report of the Budget Committee, please.
Yes, the Budget Committee took this up last Tuesday, and we heard this about this case in executive session. We did not come out of executive session and take a vote, but Ms. Bastelotis has reported the pertinent information.
And I just wanted to add, Mr. Chairman, that the Board of Selectmen held a special meeting on June 14th and voted 3-0-0 to approve settlement of $40,000. The representative town meeting claims committee will be meeting on June 19th, 2024 to consider the settlement offer. So the approval tonight is contingent upon the RTM claims committee approving the settlement.
Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, this passes 11-0-0. So we'll move on to HS1. If I could have a motion to get that before us.
I think I have to read it, don't I? This is HS1 for Human Services, $169,500. It's a reallocation of the ARPA, American Rescue Plan funds.
I'll second.
So,
Okay, it's moved by Leslie Tarkington, seconded by Leslie Moriarty. Report of the Budget Committee, please.
so the Budget Committee heard this item, and this is funding for pre-kindergarten, pre-K funding, and it's to be used for scholarships for these children who are attending preschool. The money is being allocated to the United Way, and they are going to proceed with a scholarship program. This is money that was originally intended for Human Services to create a pre-K program using the bank facility down in Byram, but that didn't prove to be feasible, and this is another way of addressing the needs of families that need this additional support to send their children to pre-K. And the vote of the Budget Committee was 4-0-0.
Yeah, I would just note that in response to a question that I asked, that this is a one-time event. We should not expect this to be a continuing program. Any discussion?
Yes, my understanding is that the reallocation is effective at the start of the fiscal year 25 budget because the RTM budget resolutions grant us the authority to reallocate as of July 1.
That's correct, and that's the way it was voted at the Budget Committee.
We're getting a nod of yes. Maybe you could state yes,
Yes.
just for the recording.
Yeah, we will ensure that we will not allocate the funds and finalize the contract until July 1.
Okay, thank you. The TV can't see the nods.
They can't see the nod. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objection to unanimous consent on this? Seeing none, this passes 11-0-0. Thank you for showing up. We wanted to just have a record vote on this
Okay.
as an individual item, so appreciate your showing up tonight.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
So the next item that we have coming out of the Budget Committee is NW7 for TNW, $1,240,000. This is a transfer, an internal transfer, and the use is for the payment of professional fees.
I'll second.
Moved by Leslie Tarkington, seconded by Leslie Moriarty. Could I have the report of the Budget Committee, please?
Right. We heard this as presented by the Chief Financial Officer of Nathaniel Witherall, and she gave a breakdown of the funds, and basically she compared it also with previous year funds. The funds are for Met's next line for dietary services, for other consulting services related to the collection of accounts receivable, for some MDS consulting, and for some CareTech Profitability Recruiter. So a breakdown of these funds, and again, they totaled $1,240,000. The vote of the Budget Committee was 4-0-0 for the transfer.
I'll just note that Ms. Lynch just joined us. We're on your item. If you want to come up and sit. We have the report of the Budget Committee. You want to make a short, do you have a presentation on this at all to explain what happened? No, you need to push, it needs to be green. There you go.
I have the same info that I presented to the Budget Committee.
Is anybody, yes.
Thank you. I watched the Budget Committee. I didn't see anything discussed in regards to the quality of food. A couple of years ago, this was kind of broadcast that the food quality was poor and that was going to be addressed. Is this being addressed with this kind of funding here?
In February of 2023, we switched vendors from Nextine to Metz. A year before that, we had switched from Morrison to Nextine. So since that time that you mentioned, there have been 2 changes in food service providers. That is part of the reason for the high dietary professional fees, because the dietary professional fees include Metz labor, both hourly and salaried. And the food costs are not part of this transfer, but they are slightly over budget as well. But the good news is that the Family Council has reported in their most recent reports that people are happier with the food. So I guess it depends on who you talk to. We are working closely with Metz to address the costs and bring them closer to what we contracted them for. But most of the overage are related to labor, not food.
Okay, I'd like to add to
Go ahead.
that. In watching the Budget Committee, I was very disappointed to read about these new financial issues that were not accounted for. They came in as a surprise. They were in the middle of the accounts receivable problem. There's always a good discussion of why these things happen at our municipal-run nursing facility. What I'm frustrated in this last budget cycle, we did not see a new business plan for the nursing home. And I personally am anxious to see how we are going to address the census issues, the quality issues, the financial issues, and why we're still in this business. I note that the state of Connecticut inherited a nursing facility 4 years ago, Waterbury Gardens, and they immediately saw that this was just not feasible for the state to run. And here we are as a town continuing to run this facility, and it's not just financial, it's the core expertise, the people involved. We know it's a highly regulated business, it's highly difficult environment, it changes. And so I just wanted to express to the community that next month, Nathaniel Witherall management is going to be presenting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what is the new business plan so that we can correct this situation. Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none. I think we probably should take a record vote on this. If you would call the roll.
Yep. Sorry, taking notes as we're
Sorry.
going along. DeChamp,
Yes.
Aurora,
Yes.
Selps,
Yes.
Vasiliotis, yes. Fisher,
Yes.
Tarkington,
Yes.
Moriarty,
Yes.
Weisbrod,
Yes.
Jansen,
Yes.
Cobb,
Yes.
Alfano.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That passes 11-0-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Move on to PW 10. We have a motion to get that on the floor.
PW 10 is for Department of Public Works. $450,000. It's a release of conditions, and it's for Greenwich Avenue ADA improvements.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Leslie Tarkington, seconded by Leslie Moriarty.
So,
Report of the Budget Committee, please.
yes, this, again, was to be a release of conditions. The conditions, shall I read them? I think that would probably helpful.
Might be, sure.
Subject to release by the Board of Estimate and Taxation upon, one, widely publicized to residents, Greenwich Avenue property owners, and key retail and restaurant tenants, public hearing on Greenwich Avenue improvements. Two, together with a presentation that includes a schematic, including a parking plan with all current and to be executed parking spaces, including new placement of ADA parking spaces and related curb ramps. Three, for the 8 intersections which will be modified, any changes in pedestrian ramps, street layout, including bump outs or any sidewalk extension. 4, an overall lighting improvement and beautification plan. And 5, a plan to include any additional safety improvements, including those for all customers, including ADA for Greenwich Avenue retail and restaurants. We had present at our meeting, as we do tonight, the Commissioner of Public Works, Amy Seabird, and the Deputy Commissioner, Jim Michael, and they presented that they believe that they had met the conditions. A public hearing was held on May 30th with wide publicity when they showed the details of the proposed Greenwich Avenue plan, including locations of parking spaces and ADA parking spaces, and additional information on it, and information on the bump outs to occur at the 8 intersections that are under discussion, and also in certain cases, the movement of fire hydrants and lighting to the ends of the intersections. There was a discussion on that. Vote was taken, and there was a good discussion at the meeting. Vote was taken, and the vote was 301 by Budget Committee members.
Thank you. Discussion? Anybody? Okay. Yes, Ms. Jansen, please.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to express why I think we're in this situation that in the future could help so that we're not put into a position to, after the budget is approved by the BET and the RTM, that we're actually learning for the first time what a project looks like. So I personally would like to see that in the future, a project that would encompass our most important avenue, commercial districts certainly, would have more than just a satellite picture with some circles as to what is the scope of the project. So I think that this project deserved to have full disclosure with sketches, at minimum sketches, of what we're talking about, because this project was not just addressing a very specific point. It grew. And so we would have seen that earlier, and we would have had a robust discussion. The public could weigh in during, with the CIP worksheet presented in January, when the public then discusses each capital item. There would have been ample feedback, and we would then be voting on this with some informed, thoughtful information. So I'm just hoping that this is not repeated again, because it has happened before, and I personally would like to have this not occur. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Kalb.
Yes, I'd just like to ask Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner, in your response to condition 4, you mentioned some minor changes to trees along the avenue. I'm just wondering if you could clarify what that is, please.
So the only modifications to trees is we're looking to basically update any some of the tree wells and see if we can add trees. We're not removing any trees from the project.
Sorry, what does it mean by a tree well? Does that mean with the area surrounding the base of the tree? Is that what you're
Correct.
talking
It's
about?
basically the landscape area surrounding the base of the tree, which gives the roots some room to grow and expansion for that.
So you're actually looking to expand that if you can, to add trees?
Correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'd just like to echo what Ms. Jansen said, and, as I've thought about this since the Budget Committee, I think she's correct. This was presented to us as an ADA project, but what came out in the public hearing is there are aspects that are not required by ADA. What I find particularly bothersome is the extreme, narrowing of the top of Greenwich Avenue. There may be some need for some extensions on ramps, but the public is generally dissatisfied, as far as I can tell, with the Elm Street. Anybody who drives a car through that intersection is confused. I don't see the upper part of the avenue getting any better. I think we need to do a reset on this project. And while it appears the conditions are met, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and really look at taking this down to just ADA scope, because the feedback in the public hearing was not good for the other aspects. Ms. Moriarty?
I just want to ask a question because we talked about this at the Budget Committee meeting about the extent of some of the changes, and the responses were that they are in line with ADA accommodations. So I'm not sure the information you just indicated that the design and the changes of the intersections go beyond requirements. Maybe we'd let the DPW staff respond to that.
My understanding is it may be in line, but not required. But maybe you could respond on that, Mr. Michael.
We have significantly reduced the project from what other projects we initially had. The improvements that we presented at that meeting are strictly for ADA improvements and for the requirements of ADA. They don't go above and beyond in doing any excessive work that's necessary. The work that's necessary is to improve the ADA ramps and the proper sloping necessary for those.
So you're saying that the narrowing of the roadway is necessary for ADA?
Correct. It allows us
The
the
degree
ability,
that you're doing?
it allows us to be able to properly create the sidewalk area and the slopes on the sidewalk in order to accommodate the ADA compliance.
Something, Karen?
Yeah, I guess what was raised at the hearing, at least what I heard, was that why can't you start the sloping further back? You have a long sidewalk there that would not necessitate going into the roadway. There was a lot of concerns at the public hearing about the narrowing of that and quite frankly, the chaos it's going to cause going forward with people making left-hand turns to the avenue. So I guess my question is, why can't we start the slope further back on the sidewalk so that it doesn't have to result in a narrowing?
And the answer to that is because you have to have a landing area once you get off of the sidewalk, and that area needs to be provided there, plus the sloping to get down to the roadway is necessary. You have to have it in both directions, not just along Route 1. You also have to have it coming into Greenwich Avenue. And the top part of Greenwich Avenue is the very top is some of the steepest area we have. So we have to provide a landing area plus the sloping area at that location, which forces us to add additional space to the sidewalk area that goes out into the roadway of what you consider the roadway.
A little skeptical.
I think we're very skeptical that you have to take it down to the degree you've taken it down. And it seems like something the public is really, I think we just need a reset. So I'll be voting,
I'm sorry.
yes, Mr. Calb.
Sorry. It's my understanding that today what's before us is whether or not DPW has met the conditions for the release of the funds. It's not a discussion about whether or not this project is viable. We already voted on that and approved funding for it. So I'm not sure that we should be discussing the merits of the project so much as whether or not conditions have been met to release the funds.
It was sold to us, Mr. Calb, as an ADA, and some of us, including many members of the public, are skeptical that the degree of narrowing is required by ADA.
Whoa. This is really surprising to me. It's been alleged that the DPW somehow didn't disclose the project adequately, that they're grossly negligent in terms of how they presented this, that their competency here is in question. Well, let me finish.
I think your comment is out of order, Mr.
No,
Weisbrod.
I don't think so.
Your
And
language is out of order.
I don't think so.
It is.
And we've had a budget committee meeting for the budget. We had a full BET meeting for the budget. We had a vote at the full BET during the budget process. There was ample opportunity for this BET to explore as to its heart's content any issue relating to the project. The BET had a vote. The vote said we approve the project, albeit at a lower amount than what was requested. BET had a vote, and at that vote, it was approved to grant the money with conditions. The only matter that we are here tonight to do is to determine were the conditions met or not. You can't run this town if you continuously restart from the scratch because somebody at a public hearing has a view that may be adverse to, what somebody else may think. And my question is, show me where the conditions are not met. We're not here to evaluate the project. We had a budget committee, we had a full BET, we've gone through this at some length and in some detail. So what specifically are the conditions that were not met?
Ms. Aurora?
Just, I hear you, Mr. Weisbrod, and Scott also on the same comment that, the objective or the purpose of today's vote is really to think through, have we met the conditions, which are the 5 conditions. I will say that the first condition, which is subject to release by the BET on the widely publicized public hearing, the way we write that into our conditions, we don't write, based upon a vote after the public hearing. The purpose of that particular one bullet point is to understand what the public is thinking, and if there are concerns raised in that public hearing, we absolutely, as a BET, have the right to think through how do we want to go about, either slowing down, rescoping, or whatever. And at that public hearing, which I did attend, the majority of the members of that public hearing, I think there was, 30 or so members that attended from the community. I think 90%, over 90% had concerns of one way or the other, and I think there are opportunities absolutely to correct some of those concerns. And I think that, again, just want to clarify, it's not just a rubber stamp, it's also to think through what comes out of that public hearing.
Mr. Selps?
I really have to respectfully disagree with Mr. Aurora. Let me explain why. We could have written a condition that said subsequent approval to the BET of the results of the public hearing, and we didn't. Mr. Weisbrod is correct. The issue that is before this board on the agenda is whether the release of the conditions has been satisfied. It's not that we couldn't have done what Ms. Aurora has suggested. We could have, but we did not. And what we're really doing now is attempting, or at least some people are trying to reopen the approval, and I just don't think that is procedurally proper. And beyond that, we've already heard Mr. Michael say that, in fact, these these conditions, these issues that have been raised by the public are in fact are necessary. And what I'm really hearing from at least some members of this committee is they're not really satisfied with what DPW is telling us, notwithstanding the fact that what I heard as the answer to the question was, yeah, this is necessary. And so this really is a disguised collateral attack on the process rather than a vote on the release of conditions, and I object to that.
Ms. Aurora?
Just want to respond to that. I hear what Steve's saying. I'm just not a lawyer, so the way I read that first bullet point was absolutely that you do incorporate the feedback from that public hearing. And I guess had I had that lawyer's hat on, maybe I would have written in that. I don't know how else to would have written it, but.
Mr. Deschamps?
Yeah, I would just argue that there might be a middle element here, and that is it was an opportunity for the DPW to hear from the community about the project. And you're here before us tonight looking for approval. The condition has been met, as I understand the conditions as they were written. Do you have any concerns, having heard from the public about this project? And I'd like to know specifically, as has been mentioned tonight a few times, what specifically in this project is beyond the scope of the ADA compliance requirements?
We did hear the comments that made at the meeting. We understand that change can be difficult for some people to completely understand what's necessary. We feel that all the improvements are meeting the minimum requirements necessary for ADA compliance. The project that we have put forward at this time is the minimum we need to do in order to meet compliance. I'm not, we would be looking for some sort of direction on what things we could need to change or so forth. Based upon that would meet with ADA compliance, because I'm not sure there's much we can do that would still maintain ADA compliance.
Staff have spent a lot of time on
We-
those slopes.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I've been speaking with staff, they've spent quite a bit of time, I've watched the team spend quite a bit of time looking at the issues of slopes and cross slopes and things like that in the design. It's not easy. We've had different groups sitting together looking at things going, could you go like this? Could it go like that? Could you do this? Could you do that? So, hopefully you folks understand that a lot of thought does go into these things, a lot of engineering time looking at layouts. So, things that are not ADA, a tree well maybe, fixing a tree well for the Parks Department maybe is not officially ADA, but.
So you've had engineers looking at this project who are experts in the field who have, you've said now twice, just the last minute, meeting the minimum, we said twice, minimum ADA requirement standards, yeah, right? I mean, there's, what am I missing?
That's our view of it.
Okay,
It's,
thank you.
I think one of the things I would also note, and it is a very difficult thing when we deal with these projects, when we go to public meetings for these projects, it's been my experience, I have been here now, dinosaur time, who comes out for public meetings? It's rare for most of the things that we do to see people come out who actually like what we do. What comes out? Who comes out? People who don't want what we're doing. I have seen that for 20 years. We do it in the towns you may have lived in before you lived here, or if you've been to public meetings. That's what you're frequently seeing when you're preparing projects. We see it during budget meetings. Who comes out? Do the people who support the town budget come to the meetings and get up and go, I want to say I'm supporting the budget? Sometimes, but in general, we see a lot of this. So we design to regulatory standards, to good engineering standards. We do our best. It's not always easy to communicate these things to the public. People don't always like what they see. We do our best, as we said, to explain it. And we get sometimes the frustration, people, didn't you look under this rock or under that rock? But that's what we can tell you for, a lot of this work out there. Lots of different opinions about Elm Street. I heard, Mr. Fisher, your opinion about Elm Street. We've got lots of different opinions about Elm Street out there. Some people just hate it. I'm getting that vibe there. Some people like it. You know, what do we usually hear when we're asking people why they don't like it? Usually everyone's telling us, I'm not speaking for Mr. Fisher here, obviously, but other people we've spoken with, well, I want the police back on the avenue. I want someone to control the traffic. And we're like, well, that we can't fix, but we can create shorter pedestrian crossings. We can, you know, have better curb ramps, better slopes for people who need it. That we can do. So these are very difficult things we navigate. So we'll see
Ms.
what you all
Moriarty.
decide, and we'll go from there.
So this particular project is about ADA improvements, right? We know as a town, we are very far behind in meeting ADA requirements for our citizens. We certainly have it in our buildings, and we have been identified an issue on the avenue. As a matter of fact, I believe that we don't have an ongoing lawsuit, but there had been a hint of a potential lawsuit if improvements aren't done. But I think, you know, more evidence this budget process is broken, that the individual opinions of members on this board are identifying, do we like or not like a certain project? As Mr. Weisbrunn said, we voted on this project. The condition says, did we have a public hearing? I watched the public hearing on Zoom. I don't know how many people watched it. We talked about 30 people in a room who, as Ms. Siebert said, is probably people who are concerned about change and concerned about improvements that might have some impacts on how they use the avenue. But to use that as the basis for saying this is a project that's widely rejected, that's addressing ADA needs, that we've heard does not exceed what is required to make the avenue safer and accessible for our population or a portion of our population, I'm just astounded that this board sounds like it's moving in that direction.
Ms. Fasciotis.
First of all, I'd like to correct some things, okay? The only reason why these changes are being made is because we are repaving Greenwich Avenue. We have 88 curb cuts currently, and the only reason why we are changing these curb cuts is because we are repaving the avenue. So to say that we are not ADA compliant, we are ADA compliant with the standards when these sidewalks were put in. The other thing is that what I raised at the Budget Committee is that there are recommended numbers of ADA access points for public streets, the minimum of which I believe for the number of spaces is 6 on the avenue. We have 17 on the avenue. It's not to say that we can't go above and beyond. We can, as a town. But, you know, the question is, you know, we do these projects without public input. We get the public input, and quite frankly, I sat in the room on the public hearing, and I heard some very good suggestions that were basically dismissed out of hand without any further, that's a good idea, let's think about it, because we've already got a plan in place. When we voted for this, we were told that we had a lawsuit pending. So it was like we had a gun to our head. We found out later after the vote that there is no lawsuit pending, that it was a grievance that didn't even come to this. So, you know, again, I don't know what we're doing here as a board, but I'm just flabbergasted myself that more thought and more understanding with the public. Perhaps in the future, we can start these projects by having public hearings first and getting the input and the concerns and having some sort of idea so that when we come to make our budget decisions, we are making informed decisions as well. I don't feel like I made an informed decision when I approved this budget allocation.
Mr. Kalb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your opinion, you know, Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner, at that meeting, when you were explaining the plans to the public, at the public meeting, were there suggestions that were made that could be incorporated into the plan without, having to make major changes? Or is this, it sounds like from what you're saying is that you guys are doing the minimum amount that we need to do to reach compliance, and that the changes that were being suggested might, I don't know, require more funding, or would be disruptive to the plan, or would, result in us not meeting the minimum requirements for ADA compliance. So is there anything that was out there that was suggested during those meetings that was something that could be easily incorporated, and that was something that would be reflective of what the town is trying to do with ADA compliance, meeting our standards?
So I think a couple things that I would say from the meeting that we took away from. Number one of the questions that was asked at those meetings was, is there any lessons learned that we've had from the improvement we did at Elm Street? And yes, there are some certain lessons learned that we've done, and we're wanting to make sure that everybody understands that the raised speed hump feel of Elm Street is not going to be replicated at other locations. That's something that people are not happy with, and that's something that we didn't plan to incorporate into this. I think that the improvements that we proposed at that meeting, I think we were trying to make sure that there was clarification on what those improvements are. They're the minimum standards of ADA compliance. And so that's part of it. I think there was some questions on, some of the numbers of parking stalls. There's a number of different, like I described at that meeting, like I described at the Budget Committee meeting last week. When you look strictly at the code, there's a minimum guideline for what they require. When you get over 200 parking stalls, that's 4%. We have around 4 parking stalls. That would make 16 be required for this, or 400 parking stalls on the avenue. That would mean we would have 16 ADA stalls necessary. We look at, so those were some of the suggestions that were made during that time, and making some clarifications on some of the things that we've done. Some other things that were brought up was some of the, sight lines with plantings when they get put at intersections, making sure that they don't block the views of people so that people are able to be seen. There was requests for additional parking, not necessarily, knowing it's part of this project, but could there be more parking in downtown? There was a recommendation of a parking garage, multiple parking garages put in. Those are all things that we're, putting in our hats of hearing the information, but, we're trying to meet the minimum standards for ADA compliance. Those things were raised. I do want to make one point that was brought up. There was a complaint made to, and just for clarification, there was a complaint made to the ADA coordinator for the town on Greenwich Avenue approximately 2 years ago. That complaint went through the hearing process. It went before the Board of Selectmen, and the agreement was that there would be a budget request made for ADA compliance for this project. That's the process that we went through. In the event that project does not, and so the agreement that was made was to allow the town, Public Works, to work through and getting the ADA compliance brought forward. And so that was part of an agreement as part of the Board of Selectmen process, or it's part of the town's process of how ADA complaints are addressed. And so that was the result of that. Not firmly a lawsuit, but it was a formal complaint that was settled through the Board of Selectmen.
Were there any specifics in that, particularly in regard to the top of the avenue?
There were the specifics were that the ADA compliance along Greenwich Avenue be completed and be addressed within, technically it said within 1 year, and we're beyond that time frame at this point. So, we've been talking with the persons who made the complaint and explaining to them that there is the budget process going through this process, the program we went through, and the design process, we've gone through that, piece, and that's where it stands.
Mr. DeChamps and then Ms. Fasciotis.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Could you just explain to me and my colleagues, if this does not pass, if my colleagues vote that the conditions are not met, and the release of funds is not approved, just practically what happens to this ADA compliant project and the project itself? Like, just practically what happens?
I'm not sure. I'm going to answer that with a big, I'm not sure. Because we've got a bunch of things designed. We do want to pave the avenue. It is true that when you pave, you bring things into compliance. So, are we creating and I don't wish to be disrespectful, but are we creating a design group where we need to bring you all into the room? Or what is the, because these are regulatory things we go with, again, with the slopes, cross slopes, do we need to have smaller groups and go through all this or what? Or I guess I'm hearing like, well, I don't like certain areas, or, I want certain things to remain the same. I'm a little bit at a loss. I think it would be a tough thing. I don't think it would be good for us to give you some firm answer right here. Obviously, we can't move forward the work, and we'll have to go back and see what do we do.
Leslie Tarkenton, or did you want to speak again? Okay, Leslie Tarkenton.
So, I do think there's always a chance to go back and rethink. I think, because of, as we've said before, Public Works plan to repave Greenwich Avenue, and I think we all agree that that's needed. Therefore, that plan must comply with the federal ADA requirements. And I think, that we're all in full, agreement, and we support that. Nevertheless, I think it should be the responsibility of the town and Public Works to balance that compliance with a Greenwich Avenue that is equally safe for other users, whether it's at the top of the avenue, as has been pointed out, or for other users, including Greenwich Avenue retail, restaurant, and office tenants, employees, and the customers of those same retail and restaurant spaces. Many are high-end space tenants, whether restaurants or retail, and all other factors must be taken into consideration. So I think, again, we know that Greenwich Avenue is almost half of our commercial value in town, no matter all the office parks and everything else. So it's very sensitive. And, because many or most of the restaurant have these pods for outdoor dining, and this is a question that I've asked before, should all the ADA spaces with the ramp spaces be only in front of the retail? And quite frankly, I asked the question, and you very kindly did respond, that the restaurant pods are taking 43 parking spaces from those available, and I think approximately 6 months is the period of time. So, should this plan incorporate that? Another thing is that there are 19 ADA spaces, but we know that the regulations also permit the spaces to be on the side streets. And then it was explained to us in Budget Committee that there are other spaces on, and help me on the street, Bruce Place, I think it is, near the senior center, which should be countable. So the question is, can we space some of this out and, kind of balance this? And I also point out that these ramps can be very slippery, and this is a very, as was said by our town planner, in February when he was talking about the restaurant pods at the Board of Selectmen's meeting. I actually have his quotes here, but I won't pain you to. He talked about how difficult it is, and so we recognize your position here of doing this on this, steep precedent avenue of steep slopes. But then we have to make sure that all of this is very sensitive for all users of Greenwich Avenue, and obviously taking into effect the ADA without question. So we want to be compliant. There seem to be questions that perhaps should be further explored and addressed with appropriate solutions. So, again, I don't think I am raising anything that we haven't talked before, but the current plan calls for the redesign of 8 intersections. And quite frankly, I think this should have been presented at the Budget Committee. And, we've said it before, and I will say it again. I hope that next year, our CIP requests come in with more supporting detail. It's not just this one, but, others. So I just wanted to add a little bit more. I think it's important. This avenue, it's not only, it's an important shopping area, but it's also the image of Greenwich. And we want to make sure that we're addressing, obviously, the ADA, but also everything to keep it very special. And it is special.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair? Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
Ms. Moriarty, please.
So there's, this was unexpected, given the vote at the Budget Committee. There's a lot of new information, and I think this puts a project, an important project, certainly at risk. I would like to call for a recess so we can talk amongst our caucus. Thank you.
Okay, we will have a recess for an indeterminate time. Do we need to go anywhere?
Are you going to a room? Leslie?
They're going.
Can you just tell, are you going into a room? You dropped something.
We're going into his point.
We need to move to another.
I'm sorry?
Elliot has read the material, so he was prepared to vote with his view beforehand. Elliot, you can speak for yourself.
Yeah, first off, let me apologize.
All right, before that,
Wait, hold on.
hang on.
Elliot, hold on.
I just want to, call us back into session at 8:10. For the benefit of the public, we had a caucus session for each individual party. We are still on PW 10, which is the DPW release of conditions for Greenwich Avenue ADA. Okay, so Mr. Olczak has some comment, I believe.
So Elliot, do you want to comment on the?
Yeah, let me just say first off that, I apologize for not being there in person. I took a spill yesterday evening and I spent most of the day in the emergency department at Greenwich Hospital today. And I would have called in earlier, frankly, but I was drugged up for a good portion of earlier in the day. But I'm feeling, I'm feeling up to it now, and I'm glad to lend my voice and participate with you now. And I'm very familiar with the situation, and I'm in concurrence with my colleagues, my Democratic colleagues, in wanting to see this money released and to move forward with ADA compliance on Greenwich Avenue.
Okay, is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Moriarty?
So as we've been discussing, this is a release of condition. The condition that I believe is being interpreted differently is upon a widely publicized public hearing on Greenwich Avenue improvements, together with a presentation that has the details on several aspects. So I think as we vote, I think it has to be very clear what exactly we are voting on. Is it a release of conditions because of a public hearing, or are people going to vote against for different reasons? And if someone is going to vote against releasing the funds, they should be identifying what condition here was not met. I want to point out that when we craft these conditions, and it's been pointed out to me over the 8 years I've been on this board, that the RTM relies on this board following through with what we say in our conditions. We can't release things early if conditions haven't been met, but if something's been met, we are obligated to release the funding, because that is what the RTM, the representative town meeting, has indicated that they are support within our town budget. So to interpret conditions because of a personal opinion on something you may like or not like is not an appropriate reason to turn this down. I also think it is important, for if this does not pass tonight, that this board has to be extremely clear on what they expect to happen to this project, what the next steps have to be, so we know how this project needs to move forward. It gets more expensive if it's delays. It delays repaving the avenue. It delays meeting ADA requirements for repaving the avenue. And I think no votes, to be a responsible no vote, you have to indicate why you're not supporting this and what happens next.
For myself, I believe I've expressed that already. Any other comments, please? Mr. Cow?
Thank you. Yeah, with all due respect to my colleagues who are concerned about this project, I think, in my case, I think we already spent a lot of time talking about the merits of this project. You know, we debated it, we vote on it, we actually cut back the initial expenditure, and approved it and conditioned it. And I think that given the fact that, you know, if these conditions have been met, I think that we are obliged to release the funds. I think that if we're now sort of putting ourselves and twisting ourselves around because we're not happy or because this doesn't meet some of our, some of our thoughts or our wishes. I think we are in danger of sort of jeopardizing our process. I think we put our town at risk. I think it becomes irresponsible in terms of how we operate effectively. If going forward, I'm not sure what we do if we have a precedent that just says that we appropriate funds, we condition them, and then in the end of the day, we decide, well, we're not going to release it. So I don't know how we go forward. I think that would put us in a very precarious position. And frankly, I think also that we need to, to protect all our citizens, and that includes those who need ADA compliance. And I don't think that we should be delaying this any further. I think we've already heard from our commissioner and deputy commissioner that there was no information that came forward that would cause them from the meetings, other than from, there were some individuals who expressed dismay, but there were no specific recommendations that would cause them to change the minimum design plans that they have in place to meet ADA compliance. Suggestions like, well, what about plantings? What about having more parking spaces? What about having a parking garage? These are totally irrelevant to what this project is about. So I'm just expressing my point of view here that I think it's important for us to, as Leslie Moriarty has pointed out, if the conditions have been met, that we have to release the funds. We've already talked about this project. I don't believe we should be reopening it. And I think that sets a bad precedent. Thank you.
Anybody else? Ms. Vasiliotis, would you call the roll, please?
DeChamp,
Yes.
Aurora,
No.
Selps,
Yes.
Vasiliotis, no. Fisher,
No.
Tarkington,
No.
Moriarty,
Yes.
Weisbrod,
Yes.
Jansen,
No.
Kalb,
Yes.
Alfano,
No.
6. Oh, I'm sorry, all check.
Yes.
Okay.
Identify yourself, please.
Yes, hi, this is Elliot Allcheck.
Thank you.
6-6.
Okay, the vote is 6-6. The item fails. We move now to PW 11. If I could have a motion in regard to that.
Yes, PW 11. This is also for the Department of Public Works. $2,870,000 release of conditions for the Glenville Corridor CMAQ project.
I second.
Moved by Leslie Tarkenton, seconded by Leslie Moriarty. Could I have a report of the Budget Committee, please?
Yes, the Budget Committee heard this project. This project has been an ongoing project over a period of about 6 years. I'm looking for my piece of paper here. It began in 18, so, the total that has been appropriated for the project is $6,770,000. We explained that there are substantial grants available most recently, and the Budget Committee approved this 4-0-0 for the release of conditions for the Glenville corridor.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none?
I just want to add
Yes.
that we get some additional information from the Public Works, including the construction numbers, and those have been shared with everyone on the BED.
Ms. Moriarty?
I just want to acknowledge the work of Representative Rachel Khanna for assistance in getting the additional grant funds for this project.
Any other discussion? Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, this passes. I assume, Elliot, you could hear me. There was no objection?
Yes, thank you, Harry. No, no objection on my part.
Thank you. So this passes 12-0-0. Thank you all for your patience with our deliberations. If we could have the comptroller's report, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, BET members. I'll just give one quick update, and then I'll open up the questions on the Comptroller's report. There's been a lot of ins and outs in the accounts payable section that's noted in the Comptroller's report. But of note, the chief accountant retired last Friday, and we did a search. A number of BET members were involved in the recrafting the job description. They changed the title. And we had 19 applicants, and we had initial interviews for 5 applicants. And then we had 2 outstanding candidates as finalists, and there was 4 BET members who coincidentally were the Budget Committee members. It was a tough decision, but we decided on Joan Lynch. Joan Lynch was the lady that was here from Nathaniel Witherall. A quick history. Joan, let me just say that both finalists were former Finance Department employees. Joan worked for 4.5 years under Natasha Yemitz, the treasurer, and although the 5 new BET members did not get a chance to interact with her until recently, Joan attended and helped with Natasha with the OPEB agendas and the Investment Advisory Committee agendas. So she worked very closely in cash management with the treasurer. She took the risk of going to Nathaniel Witherall, and just the comments that Lucia made about there's a lot of let me just back up. We had the issue with the accounts receivable, which preceded a number of BET members, and she volunteered her services knowing that there was a risk involved in the Nathaniel Witherall continuing as a going concern. She worked there for about 11 months. She saw this as a better opportunity, less risk involved. So she's starting July 1st, and we welcome her back. Having said that, I'll take any questions on the Comptroller's report.
Any questions from the BET? Do I have a motion to accept the Comptroller's report? Moved by Leslie Tarkenton, seconded by Leslie Moriarty. Any objection to the unanimous consent? Seeing none, that passes 12-0-0. If you could move to the Treasurer's report, please.
Treasurer's report, I'll offer some comments. I was looking over it while you were in recess. If I start at the bottom, and I'll refer to the ending balances. On the OPEB trust fund, I know the IAC members are very happy with the returns. We've got for the first 11 months, fiscal year to date, over 13% return on the OPEB trust fund. Although the flash report for the retirement board is not in the Comptroller's report, I did get it yesterday. Over the weekend, actually, it came in. And their return to date is 6.23%. We use the 6% assumed rate of return on the retirement board, or also known as the discount rate, and we use 6.75 for OPEB. So the OPEB trust fund is doing a lot better than the retirement board, but it's got a totally different portfolio mix. And I'll move up. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I put this trust fund into the financial reports 2 July 1st ago. There doesn't seem to be any movement whatsoever with the donations. We all went through the issue where, speaking of release of conditions, where we had $1.1 million that was conditioned. And I believe, Ms. Tarkenton, that you are going to ask the Affordable Trust Fund to come to July Budget Committee for an update. And you can see there's as I said before, there's no donation activity on this, and there's no expenditure activity. Moving up, I'll go to the ARP, where we have $10 million. I'll remind everybody, we're totally obligated, which meets the U.S. Treasury requirement of December 31st, 2024. We've got 2.5 years to expend that money, which goes to December 1st of 2026. School lunch, $2,494,000. Notwithstanding some of the negative news that came out of the recent audit that was performed, where the GPS, also known as the Board of Education, came forward, we still are in good shape, and Roland and I were discussing it during the break. This fund for the newer members used to be subsidized, and I remember one year it was like $670,000. So they still have a healthy fund balance. The golf course is doing super. Their fund balance is up, but keep in mind that they've got potential capital projects that they need to fund in the coming years. The risk fund at $2,082,000, you all voted on a release of $40,000. It comes out of this fund, and that balance is still okay at over $2 million. Parking fund, which really turned around in the last 2 years, where it was heading south and it was not doing well financially. You can see it's got a healthy balance there. These are cash balances, they're not fund balances. So in the case, I'll move down to the sewer maintenance fund, for example, which is a pay-as-you-go fund under the old modified method of paying capital projects over years. That 13 million is really a deceiving number because you have to factor in the fact that there's a large number of capital projects out there. I'll stop there, and I'll take any questions on the Treasurer's report.
Any questions of the treasurer? I would just note on the school lunch fund that Patrick from the Greenwich Public Schools did say he was going to take a close look at school lunch fund as to its sustainability, and I was expecting him to kind of comment on that come the fall.
We just, may I?
Yes, please.
No, I didn't want to interrupt Ms. Tarkenton. No. Okay, we actually are taking another look. We did do a school lunch audit in 2020. It was halted. Actually, we were supposed to start it the Monday when COVID broke and they closed the schools, and we got delayed for about 6 months. We're taking a second look in that fund because of the concerns we have and the school has, where the head of that fund, that operation that's been a vacant position for about 6, 7, 8 months. And we do have a grants audit, and we did in the grants audit that's currently being done, and it's in the controller's report. The auditors, this is CLA, Clifton Larson and Allen, is going to look at a couple of the audits. So we, not only the finance department and the Board of Education, we're paying attention to the school lunch fund. I don't know if his comments are suggesting that we're going to stop that fund. It just, the operating results are just, I'll stop there, but we're still okay as far as fund balance.
Okay, Ms. Tarkenton?
I'm just going to add that there's also a new head of the school lunch fund, and
Correct.
so there'll probably be input in that, to help to Patrick.
Patrick, I can never remember his last name.
Wow, I think. Wow.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Motion to
I
accept?
move that we accept the treasurer's report.
Moved by Leslie Tarkenton, seconded by Mr. Alfano. Unanimous consent. Any objections to unanimous consent? Seeing none, that passes 12-0-0. We get to special project team reports. I provided a written report over the weekend on Central. Ms. Moriarty provided a written report on Greenwich High School Entrance Committee. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Now, if I can just summarize the 3 important takeaways from the Greenwich High School vestibule project. The project is on time. It's expected to be completed this August. We received the first state reimbursement of $292,655, and the project is expected to come in under budget.
Very good. Any further discussion on anything? Seeing none, we'll move. We have no old business. Under new business, we have 3 items. We need to approve the use of $72,000 from the 149 account from fiscal '24 for a school cybersecurity study. Could I have I'll actually make the motion to approve the use of $72,000 for the school cybersecurity study from the Finance Department 149 account.
I'll second that motion.
Ms. Tarkington seconds. Is there any discussion on this?
So I'll just add that this came before the Budget Committee, and we voted 4-0-0 in support of this request by the Department Head for IT, Tom Klein.
Ms. Aurora?
Just want to clarify, this is coming out of the finance budget or the?
Yes.
IT So this is the 150,000 that we've allocated for consultant?
Correct. This is coming out of the 150 that's in the 149 account.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, this passes 12-0-0. I'm sorry?
Elliot, you're still on, right?
Yeah, yes, I am. I had
Yeah.
you on mute, but yes.
Yeah, if you're going to drop off, let us know.
Yep.
All right. On the second item under new business, I'm going to move that we encumber the balance of the 149 account, which is $78,000, for other studies to be looked at in fiscal '25.
And I'll second that motion.
Moved by Fisher, seconded by Tarkington. Did the Budget Committee address this?
And the Budget Committee took this up also, and we approved this 4-0-0.
I'm
Any
sorry.
further discussion?
I'm sorry, can you just give some color on that? I don't, what are the other studies and what are we approving?
It's unspecified, but it's kind of normal, I think, for us to carry forward the money, and there's talk of doing more HR work.
So we're just going to roll it to the fiscal year '25 and add
So
it?
it keeps the money available to us in fiscal '25, but in order to spend it, it would have to come before the board.
Okay,
So it's just encumbering it.
we've done that in the past?
Yeah, we've done it in the past.
Okay.
Just rolling it next.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
We're
thank
just
you.
rolling it over.
All right, thank
Yep.
you.
And in addition, though, we did say it also, possibility that it would be for additional cybersecurity studies for other departments once these were completed, if
That's right.
funds were still available.
Yeah,
Keeping up the program of renewal after about 5 to 6 years. Just
we
moving
may
into-
get on a rolling schedule of looking at various aspects of cybersecurity from a high level. Tom Klein is still sort of developing his plan in that regard. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, this passes 12-0-0. In our package is the next phase of the internal auditing program. Pete, do you have any comments on that?
Just what's in here.
We started the internal audit outsourcing program in 2020. This is phase number 4. You can go on the website and you can look at both the audit plan, the history of the audits going back way more than 10 years, probably to 2010. As I said, this is phase 4. There's 6 audits in here. I think 3 of them are repeats. We've gotten to the point where we've touched almost every part of the town. Multiple audits in the public schools. We've been all over the town. So we've gotten to the point where we're starting to recycle and go back and look at some of the other ones. Parking services is an example. Town clerk was a previous audit. Of note in this group here is we even though they're numerically listed, they're not listed as far as a priority. So the HR director has asked that we prioritize fire department payroll assessment, which is payroll practices in the fire department. So we've moved that up to the first one. Phase 3, we've completed the tax collector audit, which will be on the audit committee's agenda for July. The grants audit will be ready for September, and we will probably be starting this one in the next couple of weeks. We can do audits concurrently. So this was approved by the audit committee in April. I purposely held it off the May agenda because the May agenda broke the record for most agenda items, and put it into this month's meeting. So that's basically phase 4 of the internal audit outsource program. The firm that has done it is formerly known as Bloom Shapiro, which is now Clifton Larson Allen. The incumbent auditors, RSM US, will not perform any internal audits. They prefer to be independent and objective and have another third-party audit firm do internal audits. We've actually asked them in the past to do audits, and they've declined. So, and we did do a search from other firms to come up with CLA, and they continue to get the work.
Okay, I would, just to get us before, I would move approval of the next phase of the internal auditing program as presented in our package.
Second.
And seconded by Tarkington. Ms. Moriarty, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the timeframe. What do you expect these 6 audits to take? Is it a 2-year plan? Is it a 1-year plan?
The goal is to do each one of these 1 year at a time, okay? I'll go back to, as I said before, when we started this plan, the first audit we were going to do was the public school lunch audit. And we actually had a meeting with Bloom Shapiro, myself, Dr. Jones, Sean, who was brand new, O'Keefe. And we were supposed to meet on a Monday, and it got shut down. The whole system got shut down as far as the schools and the town hall. It threw us off cycle. So right now, the funding, the audits haven't caught up with the funding. You follow what I'm saying? So we put them in tranches of like $150,000. So the simple answer to your question is this: we want to do this in 1 year. Okay. Each one of these phases.
And you brought up the funding. We have the funding within our budget for these 6 audits. It's in the fiscal 25 budget, or is it in the prior year?
Yeah, we still have about between 40 and 50,000 left over from phase 3. But we haven't been billed completely for the last 2 audits in phase 3. So the money is basically coming from the 24-25 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay. Any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, this passes 12-0-0. In regard to the meeting minutes, I got an email from Samantha this afternoon, and I don't think we have the minutes available, but she needs to go back and work on them. So we'll have the minutes of May 20th, and hopefully this meeting come before us in July. On the chair's report, I just want to take note that there was discussion about Nathaniel Witherell coming before the Budget Committee and I think the full BET in July to represent. We've been advised that Mr. Markowitz, the chair of the Nathaniel Witherell Board, is not available then. But it's our thought, Ms. Tarkington and I, that there should be any number of people that could report on this from Nathaniel Witherell. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Markowitz and so indicate. So we should expect Nathaniel Witherell to come before us at that point. Mr. Selps?
I was just going to point out that as Pete announced tonight, Jones leaving Nathaniel Witherell, it's going to be hard for them to make a report without Jones.
Yeah, and I would say if you want a preview of it, apparently there's going to be discussion at the Nathaniel Witherell Board next Monday evening, which I intend to attend. Mr.
Yeah, it's just, from what I understand, she's departing. It was cordial when she announced internally, And she's going to be available in off hours to provide assistance for the next couple of months, July, August, September.
That's right.
Obviously, I'm sorry?
That's right, I'm sorry.
They need her to close the books up there over the next couple months. So aside from the 35 hours plus that she gives us, she's going to be available to assist with the closing out the year for June 30th.
And Mr. Sells?
Mr. Chairman, there's also a Nathaniel Witherall Finance Committee meeting on Thursday afternoon of this week. You may want to.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think it's meeting at 12 or 12:30 noon on Thursday, and both are available on the town calendar with Zoom links. Any other comments or discussions on any item?
Yes. Do you have any plan to call the capital planning committee?
I don't have a date certain for that.
Is there any sense when you will have a date certain for that?
No. Take a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, Mr. Alfano?
I'm sorry, Harry, was there a report for Central Middle School or?
I sent one around over the weekend.
Oh, okay, fine. That's great. Thank you.
Sorry. Did I get a motion to adjourn? Mr. Alfano moves we adjourn?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Kalb. Unanimous consent, that's 12:00 to adjourn at 8:41. Thank you all.